Today, I am talking about why your team's result depend on relationship and not necessarily on skills. Why your team's results depend on relationships and not just on skills. So you can have the most qualified team in the room and still have a team that underperforms. Let's think about that for a little bit. You can have the most qualified team in the room and still have a team that underperforms. And there are 3 points to this. Your skills get you in, relationships determine what happens next. Or what a relationship gap actually looks like at work is some of the things that are going to allow you to excel. So finding that gap is one of the things that will allow you to excel. Why leadership miss this and what to do instead. So we're going to look at 3 points today. Why your team's results depend on relationship, not just the skills that they come into the company with. Keeping in mind that you can have the most qualified team in the room and still have a team that underperforms. So the 3 points that I will focus on is skills get you in, relationships determine what happens next. What a relationship gap actually looks like and why leaders miss this and what to do instead. Now, skills get you in, relationships determine what happens next. When we hire people and build teams, we focus mostly entirely on skills. Can they do this job? Can they do that job? Can they do this? Can they do that? Do they have the experience? Do they have the qualifications? And those things matter, but here is what we consistently underestimate. Once people are in the room, what determines whether the team actually performs is not the skill level. It is the quality of relationship. How much people trust each other, whether they feel safe enough to speak up when things go wrong, whether they actually want to see each other succeed. Just think about two themes. Think about two teams. A team, team A is highly skilled, but people do not trust each other in that team. Every meeting is political. Information does not flow. Nobody admits when they do not know something. That's team A for you, the power team. Team B is solid, but not exceptional. They trust each other, they communicate openly, they cover for each other when things go wrong. Which of these teams do you think will get the better result? If you said team B gets the better result, then you're right. Almost every time, team B is going to get the better result. Not because they are more talented, but because the relationship foundations allows them, so the relationship foundations that they've built allows them to actually be useful to each other. It allows their talents to be used. In that team, you might find somebody that just is good at keeping the team together. You might find somebody that have the strongest skill. You might find somebody that just knows how to manage everybody so that there is no clashes. Think about your teams. Generally, there's that one person there that is the uniter. So team B might not be the strongest and the most exceptional, most talented team, but they have each other's back. They communicate freely, openly, and safely. They cover for each other and they do not throw one another under the bus. Performance is relational because it is technical. This is the part most hiring decisions and most leadership approaches miss completely because they constantly just lean in to what are you good at? What are you good at? What are you good at? They don't think about, can this person work with this person? We focus on what is the skill they're bringing on the table. We don't focus on the relationship that that person is going to be a part of, that sense of belonging. Once we bring somebody into a team, do we consider their sense of belonging in that team and how the relationship that they have with each other is going to help or pull it back? Are they feeling like they're constantly under pressure from one member of the team or from their boss? Because that's another thing. The hiring person could actually cause so much stress in the life of the employee that came in to the point where that person is not as effective as they can be because they are constantly under stress. So it's not just about skills, it's whether that person can function well within that team. And that does not only depend on the person, it also depends on hierarchy. The person above them, is the person above them creating space, a safe space for this person to also use their skill? Are the co-workers creating a safe space for this person to use their skill? Or are they nitpicking? Are they constantly finding fault? Are they throwing this person under the bus? All right, let me not stray. What does a relationship gap really look like at work? The challenge is that the relationship gaps rarely announce themselves. They are accumulated and they accumulate quietly. And by the time they are actually visible to the team or to the person, they have already been costly for a long time. So it's the nuance, it's the subtle, it's the unspoken. And it is the person who was engaged in their first week, had ideas, contributed, then slowly went quiet. Somebody comes in with the energy, excited to work, excited to be part of the team. And those gaps creep in, and all of a sudden, they're starting to mellow out. They're starting not to contribute so much. Their ideas starting to disappear. This is not because they stopped caring, but it's because at some point they felt unheard. They felt like what they were contributing didn't matter. They felt like they were not safe in that environment to maybe speak, to contribute as freely as they would have loved to. So they started to back up. They started to mellow out how much they contribute. They don't bring in new ideas anymore. I'm giving you a moment to like just sit on it, reflect on it. Is there somebody in your team that came in with so much energy, so much excitement, but now is just not contributing as much, not excited to be there? And if you're a manager, are you thinking, what's going on? Are you struggling to figure out why the team is underperforming? You've actually had performance conversations with this person and set up very, very clear expectations, but they have not examined you as as the manager, have not examined whether the team feels connected or whether that person feels connected to the team. As a leader, it's important, or as the manager, it's important that you take the time to figure out why this is happening. And because relationships are so important, instead of sticking on the skills part and saying, they're not doing their job well, they're not apt here, go take that training, go take that other training. How about you look at the relationships? What are the relationships that are happening with that person and within that team? What is your relationship as a boss with that individual? All right, for those of you on TikTok who wants to join the conversation, thank you. I I'll bring you in a little while, not right away. I'll bring you in a little while once I'm done. So basically, it is the manager who cannot figure out why the team is underperforming who needs to pay the most attention to this point. This manager have done the performance conversation. They have set clear goals. But what they have not examined is whether the team feels connected to them as a leader, whether they feel safe enough to tell them the truth about what is actually going wrong. Again, that theme of safety for your employee, not safety as in bodily safety, but emotional safety. It is two departments that technically collaborate, but never truly coordinate. The issue is not the process. Nobody ever built a real relationship across that divide. The relationship gap is not dramatic. It is slow erosion and of trust that nobody is actually talking about it until it becomes super expensive. So again, what relationship gap actually looks like at your job is not necessarily the responsibility of the person that you hire, but the responsibility of the manager to figure out where the gap is. And once you know that gap, it's easy now to address this gap. Why relationship miss this? Why leaders? Why do leaders miss this? and what can they do differently. So leaders measure what they can count, especially managers. Managers have a checklist, they need to get that all through and get it out the door. It's all about output, it's about deadlines, it's about revenue. They do not have a metric for connected people, how connected people feel to each other and to their work. So it does not get managed correctly because it's something that is not measured. Organizations invest heavily in skills training tools and systems, but very little in the quality of human relationships. There's also that belief that relationship at work should just happen naturally. That if you hire good people and give them a common goal, connection will just flow. But that is not the case. That is definitely not the case. Especially in diverse teams and in remote environments, or when people come from different backgrounds and communicate differently. You can't leave that up to chance. You can't leave that up to the teams themselves to just figure it out. Relationships have to be built intentionally. And it starts with leaders who invest in them before they need something from them. So if you're a leader, you invest before you get something back in return. One way to do this is ask someone something this week. As a manager, as a leader, as the boss, ask somebody something this week in your company that has nothing to do with the task or the deadline. Notice how the people around you communicate, not just what they say, but what they do not say. When someone goes quiet, get curious. Before you get frustrated, get curious. Build a relationship before the project is already on fire. Make sure that you build that relationship before that project gets on fire. Relationship is generally looked at as the one thing that will come naturally, but not that is not the case. Relationships do not generally come naturally. So those are some points that you can start working on as a manager. The one key thing I want to say, you cannot manage your way to a high performing team. You have to lead people. And leading people means knowing them well enough to bring out what they actually offer. Again, you cannot manage your way to a high performing team. You have to lead people. And leading people means knowing them well enough to bring out what they actually offer, to bring out what they actually offer. I'll take a slow break right now. See if anybody have any questions. Thanks to those that are watching and have connected. If you're listening to the live, drop a comment. Drop a comment. Thank you again for following. Thank you, Marco. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Queen. Thank you, Chair. I think I said it right. You just joined management and you have people under your leadership. Congratulations. 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 Do you have any particular question, concern? Again, remember, it's all about relationship, creating a safe space. The skills are great, but having a better relationship between team members is absolutely phenomenal. Think about their different backgrounds, think about their cultures, think about their education, the differences that exist in their education, think about the differences that exist in how people communicate and react. And from there, you could figure out a better way to communicate with your team, figure out a better way of that team communicating with each other, figure out a better way of you as the leader creating a safe space for everybody that works with you. I'm not going to say under you, with you, because you are the team leader, but you're still part of that team. So, what cultural disconnections actually look like? As most of you know, I lean heavy on culture. I lean heavy on the connection that exists between people as far as culture is concerned. And I do teach that, I research that, I've written papers on that. If you want any of the papers to read, reach out. I also offer a Connection Catalyst Challenge where I teach people about bridging cultural gaps, integrating culture in their teams, in their curriculums, in their business practices. So let me dive deep a little. Let's point out some things that stand out to me as far as cultural disconnection actually looks like, as far as what cultural disconnections actually look like. It is not always a compliant or confrontation. It is not always a compliant or confrontation issue. So you look at a disconnection in your team, don't think, oh, this person is not compliant, or this person is confrontational. It's not always that. It is the competent new hire who slowly goes quiet after their first month. As we stated earlier, it is that client who goes quiet after their first month. Hello, silent boy. So I'm giving 5 points that show cultural disconnection, what cultural disconnection actually look like. 5 points that show what cultural disconnection quite quietly looks like. It is not always a compliant or confrontation issue. It is the competent hire who slowly goes quiet after their first month. It is the meeting where one person disconnects and gets red or aggressive, or another silence get disinterested in what is happening. So think about the directness, the aggressiveness, or the silence. Those are all components that there is a disconnection. It is the team that functions on paper, but never truly gels when they're together. And for some reason, you as the leader cannot fully explain why the team is not gelling. Why is the team not connected? Why is the team not working together? They look so great on paper, but why are they not working together? These are not personality problems. They are cultural misreads that never get looked at. As you bring the people into your team, you didn't take the time to look at those cultural misreads. And so you start to ignore them or mislabel them, and then they cause continuous disconnection in your business. Cultural disconnections hide inside words like, you're not a cultural fit, you're too hard to read, you're difficult to work with. But this thing issue has been building up for months. This disconnection has been there from the beginning and has been building up for months. Tomboy, did you have anything to contribute? I'm on several platforms right now, so thank you all for joining. Thank you for listening in. My second question or point is what it costs when you leave this issue unaddressed. What is the cost of not addressing cultural disconnections? People disengage, and when they disengage, sometimes you don't even notice. People quietly quit. Quiet quitting is a big thing. People just start doing sloppy work. And you think it's a competence issue. It's not a competence issue. Turnover increases. Meanwhile, the company is there blindsided, not understanding why turnover is increasing. They don't even connect it to culture, which is the key thing that is causing that turnover. Collaboration suffers, like I mentioned earlier. Deals get lost, opportunities go unrealized. In research, one of the key things that I found is a lot of the experts from the United States that go to other countries to work on behalf of multilateral organization or multinational organizations, they generally cost the company almost $1 million a year because of cultural disconnections, because they did not manage the cultural connections that exist, because they did not understand cultural differences. So collaboration suffers, deals get lost, opportunities go unrealized, simply because a disconnection was not addressed. One of the most dangerous costs is talented people who just stop contributing. Even before they leave the company, they just stop contributing. They do that. Why? They do that because there's that disconnect in the culture. There's no sense of belonging for that person. They don't feel safe to be themselves 100%. They feel like they're constantly being misjudged, misread. So they just quietly quit and cost the company so much money. So much money. One thing that I would want to give as an example here is the people that leave the United States and go, say, to an African country to work. Some of these people do not integrate with the society as much as they should. And they make silly mistakes. They make silly mistakes. They make they create problems. Sorry, I'm on following YouTube. I'm following TikTok. So thank you all for joining. And for those who got disconnected, I apologize. I'm not sure what's happening there. So back to our key points as to the cost. So people leave because of the silly mistakes that happen. And I was going to give you the example of somebody that leaves the United States working for a massive organization, a powerful organization, and goes into the community in an African country. They do not integrate, they do not understand the culture, they do not understand the communal nature of the culture, they do not understand the hierarchical nature of that culture, and they want to work with people with this individualistic mindset, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it doesn't work well for a communal society. So once you're in a community, you want to be able to work more closely and really think about that relationship. Don't think business only, think relationship. Think about how you can build a relationship with your team. Listen to the people on the ground. And sometimes, if you don't ask, they won't tell you because it's a hierarchical society. People, somebody's your junior is not just going to walk into the room and start telling you something. Sometimes you have to ask and you have to create room to accept this feedback. You have to know how that society works. A big example is this Walmart example. Let's not even just think Africa. Africa is very communal. Let's think Europe. Let's think Walmart in Germany. One of the reasons the company Walmart in Germany did not do really well was because they misread that society. So they went with an American way of doing business and they failed. They failed because they used an American way. People in Europe walk everywhere. People in Europe maybe will walk to the store and pick up a few things, and on their way home, pick up a few things from the corner store and things like that. I'm not saying there are no malls. That would not be true. But I'm saying that in Middle America, we put massive mall because people come from far and near to this one location and buy in bulk and then they go home. But in a society where people take the train more than they drive, putting a business and giving that same model doesn't work. So it becomes now, what is the relationship of that business with that society? Is the business really addressing the need of the society in which it is in? Or it is just taking a model that has worked somewhere else and implementing it? That's the same thing with your teams. What might have worked with one team is not necessarily going to work with this new team. So you have to consider that what you're doing with one team and it's effective. This new team might need a different strategy. This new team might need a different way of operation. This new team might need a different way of interacting with each other. So my key takeaway here is you cannot put a number on what people would have built if they had felt like they belonged. So think about it like this. If they felt like they belong, they would have built something different. But you do not know what that is because you never created space for them to feel like they belong. In the case of Walmart, we can understand that it was a business in a society and we could put a number on how much money they lost by not understanding that community and that culture and the relationship that people have with the business. But within your team, a smaller team, sometimes it is harder. Sometimes it is harder to put a number because you really did not create that space for that single individual to really feel like they belong and start contributing in a way that allows them to bring their full self to the table. Throughout this talk, I have been sharing little ways of bridging the gap. Now, I'm going to list at least 4 points on how we can close this gap and make sure people feel like they belong, make sure that people's culture are respected, make sure that we're building a stronger relationship within our teams. We're bridging those cultural gaps that exist within our teams. And again, some of this do not only apply to teams. This can apply to individuals in relationships, in family dynamics. So it's not just a team relationship, there's several other ways that you can apply some of this knowledge. So the first point, it starts with leaders being willing to examine their own assumptions and not just their policies. Leaders should be willing to examine their own assumptions, not just their policies. Let me sit on that. As a leader, take the time to examine your assumptions of your team, your assumption of the people that you hire, your assumption of the people that you're in relationship with. Let's go to a loose example. You just meet somebody you're interested in. What are the assumptions that you have about them? Or are you just going with the checklist of things that you've always had or that society has designed, which can be interpreted as policies? So, most important point, examine your assumptions of the people you hire. Examine your assumption of the people you're in the team with. Even if you're not a team leader, examine your assumption of the team members. Second point, the question is not why won't they adapt? Because sometimes we think it's an adaptation issue. It's not. And you keep asking, why won't they adapt? Why would they adapt? No, the question is not why won't they adapt? It is what is missing about that context, in that context for them. Or you as a leader, it is what you are missing about that person's context, just as we said in the Walmart situation. It is the global context of the German market that Walmart missed. So, what are you missing about the context of the situation in which you find yourself and where the relationship is not working? What are you missing about the bigger context of it? The third point, differences stop being a friction point when leaders treat it as information rather than inconvenience. Differences stop being difference, which is the difference between you, the difference between that person, whether it's a cultural difference, whether it's a male, female, whatever that difference is, whether it is a country, you're from this country and from that country, those differences stop being a friction point when you, as the leader, treats it as information rather than an inconvenience. So look at that difference and say, what is it telling me? What can I learn from this person's difference? What is this situation telling me? What is this gap telling me? Instead of feeling like, oh, this person cannot work with the team. Oh, this person does not connect. This person does not want to adapt to our ways of doing things. This person does not want to follow policy. It's not just about that. What is the gap? What is the gap? There was a new policy at a job, and everybody was supposed to follow that policy. And one team member couldn't follow that policy, and they kept saying they could not follow that policy. But the team leadership kept insisting, you have to, it's company policy, you have to, it's company policy. Nobody took the time. The leadership did not take the time to understand why that person was saying they couldn't follow that policy. And the issue was so simple. That person was so overwhelmed doing so many other things that every time they tried to follow that policy, it instead resulted in harm for the company. But nobody took the time to understand why. They were so bogged down in that individual following policies that they failed to see the impact of that policy on the company itself. And it resulted in the client leaving the company, or the team member or the employee leaving the company, just because leadership did not stop to say, this new policy that we created, how is it impacting our team? Instead of being autocratic and saying, you have to do it, you have to do it, it's the new policy, you have to do it. So as a team member, as a team leader, it is very, very important to understand how policies are affecting our teams. And then using the gap that we see not as an inconvenience, but as free information. A gap is generally a free information that if you can accept that free information, you can bridge the gap so easily. So identify one person this week. This is my tip for you, a practical step that you can take. Identify one person on your team whose style you have found to be difficult to read, and ask honestly whether you have tried to understand their context or only measure them against yours, right? Again, your assignment, if you want, as a professor, I'm going to give you an assignment. If you don't want to call it an assignment, call it food for thought, or call it just a practical step that you can apply today. I want you to identify one person on your team or in a relationship or in any situation you find yourself in. Identify that one person whose style you have found difficult to read, difficult to understand, difficult to get along with. Ask yourself whether you have tried to understand their context, or are you just measuring them against yours? All right, I've given you a little bit of time to think about that. So now I'm going to give you a few lessons that I'm hoping you took away from this session. And I'll wait for about 5 minutes if anybody wants to discuss, then we will end the session. One of the key things that I wanted to share today and want you to take away and maybe apply, think on, meditate on, is how to recognize cultural disconnection before it becomes a retention issue. How to recognize cultural disconnection before it hurts your relationship. How to recognize cultural disconnection before you start losing money and losing people in your team. So that's the one That's point one. That's the first thing I wanted you to take away with today. The second point is why talented people disengage and what leaders usually miss about why they disengage. If you don't remember it, go back and listen to this and you will find the answer. Why do talented people disengage? And what leaders usually miss about that? So, why is there a gap? Another way to say it, why is there a gap? And why did the leaders miss that gap? Why did you, as a team member, miss that gap that existed? I also gave you a concrete shift in how to approach cultural difference as a leader. Again, if you missed it, go back, listen to the entire episode, or listen to this again, and make sure that you write notes, take notes, because our brains will fail us. Take notes. And if you want to learn more after listening to this again, or after listening to me speak for this almost 50 minutes, if you want to learn more, the Connection Catalyst Challenge will teach you how to lead across cultures with confidence and build teams where people bring their full capacity and their full self. Check the link in my bio. Again, if you want to learn more, comment below, reach out to me, check the link in the bio. And I offer the Connection Catalyst Challenge, which teaches people, leaders, particularly leaders, how to lead across difference with confidence and to build teams where people bring their full capacity to the table, bridging all the gaps that we have mentioned, helping you help your team become the best teams out there, helping you become the best department in your organization, helping you become the best person in your relationship, in your family, especially those of you that have relationships, multicultural backgrounds, multicultural families. These things are learned. We are not born with some of these skills. These skills are learned, and I'm here to teach you. I hope you learned something from the session. And if not, please go back and listen. And thank you, thank you, thank you for listening. I will stay on for about 5 minutes to see if anybody have any questions. Thank you, Ginny, for joining. Thank you, Susie, for joining. Thank you, Jean Queen. Elsa, baby, thank you for joining. If anybody wants to join in and have a chat, that's okay. You can request and I will bring you in. We can have a conversation. Otherwise, the session will end in 4 minutes. I feel like singing for you all. It's too quiet on this end. I feel like singing for you. And for those of you that are just joining on TikTok, this is almost the end of my presentation. I was presenting on disconnections, cultural disconnections, why your team results depend on relationship, not just skills. Why your team depends on relationship, not just skills. So skills get you in the door, relationships determine what happens next. What a relationship gap actually looks like at work, and why leaders miss this and what to do instead. So if you missed any of those, please go back and watch or reach out to me, and I will give you the link for you to watch the entire lecture. Again, my name is Dr. Ruth Akumbu. I am an adjunct professor. I am a coach and an intercultural leadership expert. I also just released my new book, The $1 Million Mind: How to Build a World-Class Coaching Business from What You Already Know. And that book is very exciting in the sense that even though it doesn't lean heavily on culture and the work that I do as a cultural expert, it gives you skill to build. It gives you skill to be a better person at work. It gives you the skills to think on impact and solution instead of just making money. Sometimes money is great, not saying money, anything wrong with money, but if we can create impact, we can make more money. If you can figure out what the problem is in the company and actually help solve that problem, that will allow you to even make more money. And the book really gives you a great mindset shift on how you look at your contribution to society and how you can turn the knowledge that you have that sometimes you think is not useful or that it doesn't really matter in that situation. You can turn that information into very useful information and actually charge people for that information. So if you would like, get the $1 Million Mind: How to Build a World-Class Coaching Business from What You Already Know. That is a book that is life-changing, and I give you a lot in that book. A lot, so much more that people have asked me, why are you giving away so much? I'm giving away so much because my goal is to create impact and not just sell books. My goal is for my sessions to create value for you and not just come to one of these lives and just sit here and talk. And like I said, I wanted to sing for you and dance for you, but that is not my expertise. So I want to create value for you in other ways. And this is one of the ways I'm creating value. So pick up the copy, join my Connection Catalyst Challenge, join my coaching program if you want to get coached throughout the year to be a better version of yourself. Do not hesitate to reach out to me and join the coaching program. I'm really excited about doing this. I'm actually quitting teaching so that I can just teach you. I can teach you. Instead of teaching in the classrooms, I can teach you to be the better version of yourself, to start the business you want to start, to be that intercultural expert, to use what you already know as a tool to serve others, to create impact in your society, or to create a business for yourself. I'm really excited. It is a new chapter. And I was telling somebody today how like everybody's telling me, congratulations, because I said, well, I have given my notice, and at the end of August, I will not be teaching anymore as a professor or adjunct professor for universities. I'm going to teach online. And everybody said, congratulations. I said, thank you for the congratulations, but it is very stressful. It is very stressful, but very, very exciting. It is a new chapter, and I'm very excited to see where it takes me. And I really hope that instead of making an impact every semesters with, say, how many students did I teach every semester? About 150 students every semester. What if I teach 150 students every month? What if you're one of the people that I teach every month? and all the wealth of knowledge that I've accumulated for over 20 years? What if you're the one benefiting from it? So I felt that my impact, I could reach more people and create more impact for people by coming here and sharing and teaching you, and then teaching you within my life, my coaching sessions. If you want to learn more, if you want to go deeper, if you want to understand how to be the best version of yourself, if you want to create that business that you've been wanting to create. So, again, link in the bio. Thank you again for joining, and I will see you next time. I have a scheduled live for Saturday morning at 9 a.m. California time. I hope to be there unless life takes me another path, but that is the plan. Thank you so much. See you next time.